If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. No Sasquatch were harmed in the recording of this podcast. Cody from Colorado joins me to talk about the Bigfoot he saw from his very own driveway. But he wasn't the only one on this episode of Bigfoot Crossroads.
I thought I ought to tell this story just so this information gets out. I live here in Pine Grove, Colorado, and we're basically a small little mountain community down in a valley. And I live on the south side of town, so there's a little bit of a horse pasture across the road from me, and then the river. And what I do for a living, I'm a mixed martial arts fighter. And I was preparing for a fight that I had last March. And it was February, kind of early in the morning, not real early, maybe 9 in the morning or something like that. And I had the garage door open, and I had my headphones on. I was working out, just getting ready for the fight. And I had been punching the bag a little bit, and I turned around to take my gloves off. I was going to go do some work on the weight bench. And I had seen something out of the corner of my eye, just out of my peripheral, really large across the river. And it's probably 300 yards from my garage, So I turn and look, and I see this colossal looking creature. I mean, I've been up here for 12 years, and the only thing I've seen even remotely close to this size of an animal would be a moose. Except this was standing upright like a man, and walking upward toward the mountain, like vertically straight up the mountain from the river. And it didn't wave its arms like, you see the Bigfoot documentaries, they're waving their arms and stuff. I just saw a big furry back, and it just walked up this embankment up onto the hillside and into the tree line. And I really didn't know what I had seen. I've seen bear, I've seen moose. This was larger than those kind of things. And it hit the tree line, and I freaked out. I threw my headphones off and called for my wife and my kid, and they saw the trees moving, but they didn't actually get a glimpse of this. And I almost called the police. I really didn't know what to do, and then I thought, what would the police do anyways? They probably think I was crazy. So I ended up calling Jim Myers. I don't know. Do you know Jim Myers?
I don't know him personally, but I know who he is. Yeah, he runs the Sasquatch Outpost in Bailey, Colorado, I believe.
Yes, sir. Yes. I called the Outpost because I didn't have his number. And one of the gals that works there, she connected me to his cell phone. And he was actually down buying a new truck in Denver. And I called him, and he drove his new truck from the dealership straight to my house.
Oh, wow.
And, so he said he was definitely interested because a neighbor of mine that lives maybe 200-300 yards behind my house, north of me, they have a dry cabin, so they don't have a plumbing inside, so they have an outhouse, like a porta potty. And I guess his son had been in the porta potty. And when he was coming in from the porta potty, he had seen 2 or 3 of them. And he went inside and told his dad, I don't know if I should mention his name, but he's a high school coach and a teacher up here at one of the local high schools. So he's a pretty respected and trusted individual. And they went inside and got the guns and came out, and I suppose they all ran off into the forest, but they said it was like a family of them. So when Jim heard where I was, he had heard that story a year before. And so he hustled down here as quick as he could. So the property that actually owns the land, the ranch that owns the land across the street here, is the Swan Hereford Ranch. And so we went and talked to the ranch hands there and got permission to hike in on the other side of the river on their property. And Jim and another researcher that came out with him, Emily, we all three hiked in there, and I showed them exactly where I seen it. And I sent you some videos when we spoke online. I wish I would have took more, but we found 3 or 4 sets of tracks going vertically up the hillside. And this hillside is very steep. And at the time, last February, it was, covered in 2-3 feet of snow. So we were walking in with snow up to our knees easy. And the way these tracks had gone, there's no way a human or even other animals could have mimicked this. The strides were 4 to 6 feet apart and just going straight up a snowy mountain. We found deer tracks and mountain lion tracks, and they were going vertically or horizontally. Sorry, they were going horizontally by the river, up and down the river, and this was going the opposite way, right up the mountain. I don't know what could have done anything like that. I really didn't want to say Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but I was a skeptic until last year. I don't think I'm a skeptic anymore. There's something out there. I don't know if I can call it a Bigfoot, but what we did find was we found a lot of tree breaks in that area. And Jim had noticed, he said, notice how all the tree breaks are broken off to the left. And I looked up into the forest, and there was trees just bent off to the left, a bunch of saplings going up the mountain where the tracks had gone. And he said that they always bend them to the left. I asked why. He said he thinks it's a territorial thing. So I looked at one of the smaller trees that was near us, and there was actually some like 3 to 4 inch long, very stiff, almost black hair, like chocolate brown hair in the sap, right in the bend. And so Jim Myers took, some tweezers and put them in a little baggie, and he said he's going to send them into the university to get analyzed. And I called him the other day, and he didn't answer, but I'm waiting on results back. I guess they have like a priority system at the university, like criminal cases and things take precedent over other things. So it's just waiting in line to see what the heck this was, or at least what the hair was. So I'm really interested in the results of that. Hopefully I hear back from Jim soon. I might have to stop by the outpost and just have a conversation with him, see where we're at with it. But that's basically my experience right there.
Have you talked to the neighbor, the coach, about their encounter yet?
And briefly, I said I had heard from Jim that he had an encounter, and he said he did. But he's pretty busy. We just haven't had time to really touch base. But he did confirm with me that he and his son both had seen it, or them. He said there was multiple. But I didn't get the details from the neighbor. I got them from Jim Myers. But he still lives here, just right behind my house, up in the woods. And probably 1,000 yards from where I had seen it is where he had seen it. And then another neighbor of mine, after I had seen it, I would say probably in April or May of last year, they had their brother up from, I believe, Tennessee or maybe Carolina. But the brother is a pastor at a church. And he was out walking. He has a couple little dogs. I think they're like Shih Tzus or Pomeranians or something. But he was out walking these little dogs, and they started barking. And he looked, and he saw what I had seen. He described it the same way, like chocolate brown, just the biggest thing he'd ever seen in the woods. And he said that it stepped over the horse fence into the horse pasture and like stepped over it like a man would step over a branch or something,
Wow.
And he said it cleared the horse pasture, which is, a couple hundred yards long, in just a few seconds, and went the same direction that I described it going. So that's 3 sightings in this small little pocket here in the mountains, just within 2 years of each other.
Yeah.
So that's kind of interesting to me, and especially I'm a bow hunter. I taught wilderness survival and was a mountain guide for several years, and I've never seen anything like this. Never at a zoo. I mean, I've seen gorillas at the zoo. I've seen large primates, orangutans. This was much larger than anything like that. Like the word I can describe is like a moose standing upright like a man. No antlers, of course, but
right.
Just that size.
I mean, moose are just massive creatures, just absolutely massive.
Yeah. So that's the closest description I could really give, except more shaggier looking. More shaggy like a bear.
Mm-hmm.
I wish it would have turned around or stopped for a second, so I could have seen the front side of it, seen if it had like a chest plate like a gorilla, or any human features to the face or anything, but I didn't get to see the face or the front side of it. And the way its arms were, it was almost like it might have been carrying something. Like I thought maybe it had been fishing at the river, or was maybe carrying something, like if you were carrying a book or a pizza box or something,
right?
How your arms would be in front of you. That's kind of how it looked,
huh.
So I wish I would have known what was in its hands too.
In proportion to the body, what would you say like the length of the legs were? Was it more human shaped than primate with the shorter legs?
Yeah, most definitely more human shaped. Like it was more proportionate with the size of it. I mean, its back was, I would say its back was easy 3 to 5 feet long, and then its legs were probably 5 to 6 feet long. I mean, this thing was probably in between 7 and 9 feet tall. It had to have been. I've seen huge black bears stand on their back legs, and this was nowhere near the height. Just incredible size. Like
I would assume in where you live and everything, and being an outdoorsman, you've probably seen bears plenty of times and would easily recognize if you were looking at a bear from 300 yards away across the river.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we get them all the time throughout the summer when they're not hibernating. They're on our front porch every night. I mean, we see them regularly. There's no way this was a bear. And if it was, I mean, we don't have grizzly in Colorado, but I've seen grizzly up in like Yellowstone in Wyoming, and this was bigger, like height-wise, than a grizzly would be. Probably bulk-wise, like I bet it's similar, like body size to a grizzly, as far as like its muscles or its weight.
Mm-hmm.
It had to have been in that region, but much taller. Like even if a grizzly was on its back legs, this would have been 2-3 feet taller than a grizzly, easy. And to be that big from as far away as I seen it, I couldn't imagine how big it really looked up close. It would be frightening. But I really think like more research. Maybe somebody could come out here with a drone. On the other side of that mountain ridge where I had seen it go up the mountain, on the other side of that is Pike National Forest. And that's massive. I mean, I've backpacked across it. It takes a while. 2-3 day trip to walk across it, comfortably. So anything could be in there. I've seen moose in that part of the state. There's black bear all through there. I mean, that's a perfect place if I was some kind of large creature to go hide out in a cave somewhere. There's plenty of places that could be out in the Pike.
Whenever you guys went over to the ranch property and spoke with them to get access, did you say what you were there for or what you were looking for? Was anything mentioned in conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. So Rod is one of the ranch hands, and his wife's name is Marty. And so I had gone over and I first told his wife Marty, and she told us we had to go up to the barn and find Rod. And I told Rod, and he was like, I'm not surprised you've seen something. He's like, go check it out. Let me know what you find. He seemed like a believer right off the bat,
Huh. Yeah.
I did ask them if they had seen anything like that, and they said not themselves, but they had heard that there's things out in the woods. So they were more than happy for us to hike in there, and they said that if we had to come back and do any other looking around, we were more than welcome as well. So,
I mean, it sounds like an ideal situation for a field investigator, to put some boots on the ground with that many sightings in a short amount of time in the same general area like that.
And I had no idea. When I called Jim, I had no idea that there was another sighting from my neighbor right next door. So that makes me wonder, leaving the dogs out late at night, are they safe? I got cattle dogs. I don't know if I've been more cautious since last year, even camping. Hiking, I kind of look over my shoulder now a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a different feeling out in the woods these days.
You said that you live basically in a valley.
Yeah, it's the Pine Valley.
And then across the street from your home, you have the river where you had your sighting on, and it was on the opposite side of the river.
Yep.
And then your neighbor behind you had a sighting of that group. Do you think they're crossing that river there, or is it possible that they're crossing the river there?
If they wanted to, I've seen elk cross the river, and it's only maybe 2-3 feet deep, so it wouldn't be anything for them to cross the river, even with it frozen. Right now it's pretty solid ice this time of year.
Mm-hmm.
I think they would just crush the ice, to be honest. They're so big, they'd probably be still stepping on the riverbed, I couldn't imagine they would not break the ice being that large, but I don't think it would matter. They'd just walk right through it. Especially the pastor had said it just stepped over the horse fence like a man. He must have seen it a lot closer. I think they both, the other people that had seen it closer than I had seen it. It was a little further away from me, but I'm kind of in awe. I don't know where to go from here, what to do. I want more answers.
Right.
But I mean, it's not like anybody's really funding, an adventure to come out here and start searching either, so I don't know what to do. I had been listening to your podcast for into last year. I probably started listening to you in maybe October, November. So I thought, man, I ought to reach out and just see what you would suggest to do from this point,
Yeah. I appreciate you doing it for sure. And I can definitely help you get into contact with some people that might be able to help you out and come out there and, go poking around with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Based on what you've said, some things kind of spring to mind. You were in your garage early morning, probably not a lot going on, probably not a lot of people out yet.
No, especially down here, at that time of morning down here, it's pretty quiet.
And you said you were working the punching bag?
I was for about 15 minutes, and then that's when I was switching from the bag over to I was taking my gloves off to get on the weight bench, and that's when I noticed something move.
Yeah, I'm curious as if possibly the sound, attracted it and it was checking you out, hearing that thumping sound or whatever.
I'm punching the bag.
Yeah.
I had not thought of that. I wasn't really being quiet. I was, kicking and punching the bag.
Yeah. And at night, that early in the morning and everything, sound travels, especially out, in a remote area like it sounds like you live in and everything, and then flat land to the river and all that echoing off the side of the mountain. It's a possibility, I think.
Yeah, and with the garage open, I mean that's definitely, he could have heard me and just come down to see what the ruckus was, I suppose. Yeah.
And then the other situation with your neighbor, the young man was out using the bathroom or whatever. There's been numerous reports of them coming to check out bathrooms and people in the bathroom in those type situations, especially in outhouses. It's just kind of a weird phenomenon, you know, but they seem to be very curious about us, and that's usually how they get spotted.
Yeah, he could have been watching me for a while, and I wouldn't have really known. Especially with we got some kind of like tall reed plants, bushes down by the river. I really didn't see anything until he had already passed those, you know. So when he was down close to the river, I probably couldn't see him at all.
In those videos that you sent me in the photographs, you know, the little trackway that you guys found over there, was that at the same exact spot where you saw it?
I think the video that I had sent you with the tracks where Jim was measuring the tracks, he was using an app on his phone to see how far apart the strides were. And I think that was the set of tracks that was just down from where I had actually seen the thing. I don't know what to call it.
Yeah.
I really don't know what to call it.
Yeah. Unidentified creature.
That'll do. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, your knowledge as an outdoorsman, you know, you've seen a lot of animal tracks, and you probably have more experience with identifying animal tracks in snow than a lot of people do. You know, things like snow melt happen and stuff. But just looking at what you sent me, I couldn't readily identify that as anything other than a giant bipedal something.
Yeah.
With a gigantic stride. It didn't look like snow melted rabbit tracks or anything like that. You didn't see any of the, you know, the snow toss from like a deer or an elk or something walking through the snow and kicking it up as it goes. It looked like pretty clean steps for the most part.
Yeah. Yeah. And they weren't in a hurry, you know, it wasn't like it was running or anything either.
Right.
I can tell the difference between, you know, if they're trotting along or just walking slowly, or if they're, you know, running at a, you know, sprint. I could tell the difference in a track. And there's no way it had 4 feet. There's no way it was anything like an elk or a deer or a moose. You know, you would see the front feet and the back feet, you know, and it wouldn't even have been feet. It would have been hoofs, you know, it would have been these were almost like, I hate to say it, but like human shaped footprints, but 20 times larger than the biggest footprint I've ever seen. You know, they were easily, they were 8 to 10 inches wide. You know, my foot's maybe 4 inches wide, and I'm a heavyweight MMA fighter. You know, I got a big foot. You know, I've seen, you know, I fight guys in the cage that are 6'3", 6'4" regularly. And this thing was way, way larger than any human I've ever had to compete against. I don't know. I really don't. It's left more questions than answers for sure.
Yeah. The hairs that you guys found, were they similar to any type of animal hair that you can think of?
You know, they were long and real tough hairs. I wouldn't say brittle, but just like a stiffer bristle of a hair. Longer than black bear hair. More of the texture of like a raccoon. I don't know if you've ever felt raccoon hair, how it's kind of
sure,
coarse. Yeah, it felt more like a raccoon's hair, but way, way larger than any raccoon could have ever grown a hair. And longer than, I've seen black bear hair, and it was longer than a black bear. And black bear hair is softer than that. The only thing I could think that it might have been was maybe a horse could have, you know, maybe gotten a hair from their mane or their tail, but still more brittle than that too. You know, I've ridden horses quite a bit, and their hair would be softer than this too. So really coarse, brittle, kind of, and thick. They were really thick strands of hair.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the university says about them. Definitely keep me in the loop on that. I'd like to hear what they say.
I'm hoping it's coming up in line here soon, so we get some, you know, it's almost been a year now. Well, it's February, so it's been a year now since I had seen it. So they got to be moving us up in line a little bit. I don't know. Like I had heard that they have like criminal cases that have DNA involved, and that's what takes, place over priority over all the other types of tests that they do.
Right.
I got to get back with Jim and see what he says. I'll have to update you as soon as I hear from Jim.
Yeah, for sure.
I texted him to let him know I was going to be on your podcast possibly. So hopefully he hears this and that lights a little fire under his butt to come back out here and see what we can find too,
Yeah.
So
Jim from the Sasquatch Outpost, if you're listening, come on, buddy, light a fire. Let's get it done.
Let's get out here, brother, whenever you're ready.
Can you think of what the attraction or draw might be for them to be in that area where you're at?
I would think the river. We live off of the South Platte River here. Just a water source. I would think everything, as a survival instructor, you need air, you need water, you need shelter, and you need food. And I think all of those needs are met right here. There's so many places they can hide. There's water to drink. There's a lake, Pine Lake and Crystal Lake are just up the road a few minutes. And just deep wilderness here on the other side of that mountain ridge where I seen it go up. It gets pretty hairy back in there, it's just thicket and rocky hills. There are some burn sites that are clear areas. I can see them. I don't know if they use materials, or I've seen some shows since I had seen the thing last year. I've been watching like Discovery Channel specials and stuff and listening to podcasts, and some people tend to think they build nests, and there's plenty of supplies up here for nests. We have elk, deer, fish, rabbit. I mean, I don't know if they're vegetarian or meat eaters, but either way, there's plenty of food here for them. I don't know. I would just think all the survival necessities are right here for them and plentiful.
Was Bigfoot something, you mentioned that you were a skeptic. Was it something that was on your radar at all before this happened?
Not really. I've seen weird things in the past. When I was a little kid, I lived at a cemetery. My dad was a caretaker and gravedigger. And so my mom and him converted the old funeral home into our house. And that's where I had come home from the hospital as a baby. I lived there till I was probably 5 or 6. And so I had seen weird paranormal stuff throughout there. I saw white wolves running around in the graveyard. We don't have wolves in Colorado, really. Till recently, they relocated them here. But before that, when I was a kid, we didn't have wolves. There were some stories I got from other folks, my uncles and my dad that worked the land there, and they dug the graves, and some of the graves were from the 1800s, and the house itself, the funeral home, was built in the late 1800s, and they renovated it. So my bedroom was actually where they stored the coffins before the bodies went into them. So yeah, some serious history there. My mother said at nighttime when I was a baby, she'd get up to get my bottle, and she'd feel like there was a presence in her face, like something was right in her face, breathing in her face. And she said she never seen anything, but she could feel it. So that's kind of interesting too, from her perspective of how that went.
Would you mind telling me a little bit more about the white wolves that you saw?
Yeah, it was 3 or 4 like pure white wolves, which I've never seen a pure white wolf in person. I know they exist, but we don't have wolves in Colorado. And definitely not, that was in Golden, Colorado. So it was down the hill a little ways, closer to Denver, West Colfax. And Yeah, so there shouldn't have been anything like that in that area. But they just ran through the headstones. You know, little kid, I get up and peek out the window, and that's what I see in the graveyard out there is wolves running around. And they were just real white, shiny wolves, you know, in the middle of the night.
Did you just see them one time or multiple times?
No, I had seen them multiple times, and my uncles had seen them as well. My uncle Daryl, he had said that he had seen them running through the gravestones too. So I don't know if that. I know that I looked it up later, and they said that in Native American beliefs, that the white wolf is a spiritual protector or guardian of some sort. But I don't know that had anything to do with this. It wasn't a Native American grave site. It was actually a Jewish graveyard. My dad worked for the synagogue, so I don't know that has any relevance to the Hebrew religion. I've never looked that up, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. You know, other than that, and the only other thing I could think of that would even rank in the, you know, paranormal would be these green lights I saw. Probably in 2015. They were in the shape of a triangle, so it was one at the top and then two on the bottom. And they just sat in the southern sky. I could see them over Long Scraggy is a big mountain at the end of the valley. And they just sat over that mountain for probably 25, 30 minutes in one spot. And then they just like if somebody shut off a light switch, they just poof, they were just gone.
How far apart were they?
I would say, you know, probably a few thousand feet apart from each other. You know, it was spread out pretty big, but as far as, you know, like the sky is so big, they could have easily been separated further, but they were kind of uniform, you know. It was one on top and two on the opposite corners on the bottom, just like in a triangle shape. And like the green color from like Star Wars, like the lightsabers, you know?
Yeah.
Like a brighter, but it was like, you know, I didn't know if it was being projected from the ground into the sky, if it was coming from space into our view, you know. I didn't know if it was, you know, aircraft, but it didn't move at all. It just sat there and then just moved.
Were they like changing in brightness or anything, or just like a steady light?
Yeah, just a steady green light. That's all. So, and I honestly thought probably the government, you know, Colorado's a big military state. We have huge Air Force here, Army. And then I don't know where Space Force was around that time, but I know Space Force is set up in that same area down that way, southern Colorado. Mm-hmm. So I guess I kind of assumed it was probably the military or the government or something, but definitely weird.
Yeah.
I had gone on a website, like a UFO. I can't remember the website, but it's like a UFO report website. If you have a sighting, you go on there and you post it. It records all the sightings. So I looked, and on that day, there was already people that posted that they had seen it too.
Oh, wow.
So it's known about. I just don't know what it was. So I never really was shocked by that sort of thing. You know, I know there's weird stuff out there that can't be explained, but this was different. This was like vivid. You know, it really happened. It was there. I watched it, and it wasn't like there was any question about it. I had seen something that wasn't normal, and that's what really. You know, it was just the realness of this situation that really just shocked me. You know, it's hard to even describe at this point. It was almost like an anxiety feeling when I saw this thing.
I mean, I'm just going to be perfectly honest with you. You sound exactly like so many other witnesses that I've talked to, and that includes myself, about how whenever you have a sighting of one of these things, you spend a great amount of time afterwards trying to process it mentally and trying to explain to yourself what you saw.
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I've dove headfirst into research that I never thought I'd dive into since I had this encounter. I can't say that I'm a researcher, but I'm definitely a believer at this point. I don't know. I'm definitely going to keep seeking answers, and I think that's what we're all doing at this point, is just seeking answers. So I hope we figure it out at some point. I think the world deserves to know,
Yeah.
My dad said, "Oh, you're gonna talk to a podcast about it. Don't you think people are gonna think you're crazy?" I said, "Well, I'm a heavyweight MMA fighter. I fight giants in a cage for a living, and people already think I'm crazy. I don't care." So, hopefully I don't get any negative backlash about it from anybody. But I wanted to get my story out there, and the story of the other people that had seen it too. And these are trustworthy people in the community. A pastor and a high school coach and teacher. They're respected and trusted individuals. So I couldn't. And their stories kind of match mine, right here in this area. So I can't even speculate that there's anything other than truth being talked here. It's just, I don't know, mystery, I suppose.
Well, Cody, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with myself and the listeners. And I will for sure do my best to help you out and get you into contact with some people and help you in any way I can, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man. I appreciate you letting me on and letting me share my experience with the world,
If you've had your own encounter with Bigfoot or anything unexplained, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com or submit a report on bigfootcrossroads.com, where you can also find past episodes and links to all the social media. And until next time, remember, there's something in the woods.